Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word, and yes, it is that time of year again. It is time for me to do my driver lineup predictions for next season. Before I get onto that though, let's start by having a look at my predictions from last year for 2019, of course. Now this is going to be the first time I've looked at these since doing them last summer, so together we are going to learn just how seriously you can take my predictions. I think we already all know the answer to that one, but anyway, here they are. In my defence, yes, I'm straight in with the excuses. This was before Daniil Ricciardo threw his hand grenade into the driver market. If you think back to before that just happened, everyone was expecting this static market. However, as soon as he announced he was off to Renault, it just completely destroyed pretty much all of my predictions. I can't really take credit for Mercedes, by the way. I seem to recall that Hamilton and Bottas were confirmed before I did this video. This went out at the British Grand Prix weekend. But all in all, let's be completely honest, they are pretty diabolical. And again, in my defence, this was before everything happened with Force India and Lawrence Stroll coming in to buy the team. So again, at the time, Perez and Ocon made complete and total sense. Just looking at some of those lineups though, I have no idea what I was doing when I put this together. Raikkonen and Van Dorn at McLaren, yeah, alright Sean, and Gasly and Norris at Toro Rosso. Again, the Gasly one kind of cut me some slack because this was again before Ricciardo decided to move. And I seem to think Norris was quite heavily linked to Toro Rosso as well if McLaren weren't going to sign him up. But Raikkonen and Van Dorn at McLaren, oh dear. But my score out of a possible 20, or I guess to be fair, taking Mercedes out of the equation, 18, I only scored 8. Wow. Hopefully, fingers crossed, my 2020 predictions will be better than my 2019 ones were. And we're going to start then by looking at the teams that are either officially confirmed or are as good as confirmed. We already know that McLaren are sticking with Sainz and Norris. I think we kind of knew that was coming anyway. I think they were both originally signed on multi-year deals. But it's a very good move from McLaren to get them signed up early. They can focus on next year now, and I can't disagree with their decision. Sainz has been fantastic, topping that midfield, looks set to have 7th in the bag already. And considering it's his rookie season, I think Norris has been brilliant as well, so great call from McLaren. Racing Point, it's not been officially confirmed in any statement or anything like that, but Sergio Perez has said that the deal is being finalised, and Otmar Safnauer was asked if he expects any changes next season, and he said no to that. So Perez is probably going to stay, and I think we all know that Stroll is going to stay. There's not much to say on Lance. Probably as long as his dad owns that team, he's never going to go anywhere. But with Perez, he's a driver that benefits any of those midfield teams if they can get their hands on him. And I've always said that unless a seat at Red Bull, Mercedes or Ferrari opened up, he would always stick around at Racing Point. He knows the team well, he's been there for a long time, he's settled. And at the moment, any other move in that midfield is just a sideways move. Ferrari, they're another team who haven't officially announced anything, but Vettel and Leclerc are both signed up for next year. We already know that. And Mattia Binotto has been pretty vocal in the media saying things like they don't see any reason to change their lineup, they're happy with their lineup, so I fully expect Ferrari to stay the same. And no, I'm not one of these people that buy into this whole Vettel's going to retire at the end of the season rumour. I tend to agree with Binotto. I just can't see any reason why they need to change that lineup. What Ferrari need to focus on is giving the drivers a car that can deliver and can help them win races. That is their priority, not changing their driver lineup. Right then, I'm going to start running through the rest of the teams, starting with Mercedes, and that will probably dictate the order I do decide to run in. We already know that Hamilton is under contract until 2020. I do want to throw something in here though, basically because it saves me having to repeat it for other drivers on the grid. I know what drivers have contracts for next season, but just because a driver has a contract, it does not mean they can't move teams, or indeed doesn't mean that they won't move teams. So, yes, Hamilton is under contract, it doesn't mean he won't move on, but I fully expect him to stick around next season. I can't see any reason why he'd want to leave at the moment. The only way that changes is if he suddenly decides he wants to retire, and I cannot see that happening until at least the end of next season. And as many of you have said before, and will probably say again in the comment section, as long as he's got a shot at beating Michael Schumacher's records, he's probably going to stick around. When it comes to his teammate though, you probably see where I'm going with this one, given what I've been saying over the last few weeks, but I do expect a change. And I think that change will be Esteban Ocon in for Valtteri Bottas. The fact that Wolff is, in his words, wrestling with himself about whether or not to take Bottas or Ocon speaks volumes. The fact as well that he's talking about the long term, he's saying that this isn't just about 2020, it's about beyond that. That kind of tells us all we need to know in my view, and I think Ocon is his preferred option. It isn't quite 50-50. It might be like, I don't know, 55% to 45, and he's leaning a little bit more towards Ocon. But I do expect that change to be made. It will not be Russell taking Bottas's seat. He's already made that clear, saying that it's a bit too early for him. It is between Bottas and Ocon, and even Claire Williams saying they've got Russell for the next 3 years. It'll be harsh on Bottas given how good he's been this season, but as much as I do like Bottas and do think that he deserves another year, perhaps it is time for a change at Mercedes. Everyone else is making these changes looking long term. Perhaps they need to do the same. So yeah, I'm going with Hamilton and Ocon for 2020. That sort of has a knock-on effect to Williams, I guess, with Russell staying. As I've already said, Claire Williams has said that he's staying for 3 years. Again, with the contract thing, it doesn't mean that he will, but you know what I mean. And again, as I've already mentioned, Wolff has ruled him out of going to Mercedes, so he will stay where he is. I think he deserves it, and another year at Williams is a great way for him to gain more experience as well, so hopefully he'll be a bit more of the polished article by the time he arrives at Mercedes, if indeed that ever happens, but he could do with that Williams being a little bit better next season. Who will be joining him though? The Kubica story is amazing. It absolutely is. We keep saying it. It's this fairy tale story, but he really has struggled this year. There's no denying that. Of course, there are limitations there because of the injuries that he suffered because of that awful crash, but also that car is absolutely terrible. And if you take all of that and stick that alongside the fact that he's not been in F1 for a very long time, the sport is very different now, it probably shouldn't come as too much of a surprise that he has struggled. I mean this with the greatest of respect to him and everybody who supports him, but a fairy tale story can only get you so far. You've still got to perform. It might be that the team decide to get rid of him, or it might even be that he decides he doesn't want another year driving around at the back of the field. But either way, I fully expect that he will move on at the end of this season. Now, I did think about Bottas for this one, but I just cannot see him going from a race-winning team to driving around at the back. With all due respect to Williams, that is a massive step down. And why would he want to do that? I believe that if he doesn't get a seat somewhere in that midfield, or a decent seat in that midfield, it's more likely we'll see Bottas racing in another series than with Williams, for example. So I have actually decided to go with Nicholas Latifi in this prediction. He is performing well in F2, but I've got to put this little disclaimer, I guess, in there. He's performing well in an average F2 field. That F2 field is nowhere near as good as we've seen in recent years. It is, by the way, nowhere near as bad as we've seen in the past, but it's not the best. But he is still doing a good job. He also brings money to the team, which is something Williams will lose if Robert Kubica does move on. He's been taking part in practice sessions and all of that, so he's had time to get to grips with the car. It just feels like the perfect match at the moment. At Alfa, I think Kimi will stay for next year. I mean, he has come out and said basically that the contract he has means nothing, and essentially that if he wants to go, he will, but I think he will see his contract out. He's been delivering for the team, and I can't see any reason why they would want to drop him, so for me, Kimi absolutely stays. I also feel like Giovinazzi will get another season. That might surprise a few. No, he hasn't been great this year, but we've got to remember who he's up against. Kimi Räikkönen is massively experienced, he's a world champion, and so it was always going to be a tall order to get anywhere near him. He has shown progress this year though as Giovinazzi, that's something I've noticed, and he needs to continue that on into the next few races and into next season if he's given the chance to stay. The other thing that might save him is he is in the seat at Alfa that Ferrari have first refusal, if you like, on. And there aren't any Ferrari juniors ready to step up and fill that seat just yet, in my opinion. Many will say Mick Schumacher, but he is not ready. Trust me, I would love to see him in F1, but he needs some more time in F2. He's not been great this season, although he did win in Hungary, of course. And again, I just think a second season is needed before he makes that step up to F1. And just one more thing as well that could play in quite nicely to Giovinazzi's hands is that Ferrari tend to be more patient than other teams are, let's put it that way, with their young drivers or with their junior drivers. So for 2020 at Alfa, it's going to stay the same in my view, Kimi and Gio. At Red Bull, Verstappen is not going anywhere. He's contracted for next season and that reported get-out clause has apparently expired. There's also no reason whatsoever for the team to move him on, and with the progress the team have made this year, he's in a very good position to challenge for more wins during the final 9 races of this season, and Red Bull could well be set up nicely for 2020, maybe a championship challenge. Who's going to partner him though? I'm going to go with Alex Albon. As I said in the video on Thursday, my gut feeling is that he will be absolutely fine, will perform better than Gasly, and will do enough to stay at that main Red Bull team for 2020. There's a fair bit of pressure on him going into these final few races, but I do think he'll deliver. Again, I did consider Bottas, and I think he will be a very good option for Red Bull, but I'm pretty sure they will prefer to give the drivers that they've invested their time, their effort and money into a chance before they bring in anybody else. I think Red Bull also need to start backing another driver as well. Because if Verstappen decides at the end of 2020 that he's off, and they've dropped Gasly and they decide to ditch Albon and bring somebody else in, who have they got from that young driver programme? They need somebody in that team settled just in case Max does decide to move on in the future. But I do think Albon will do well and will keep his seat for next season. That's obviously going to have a knock-on effect to Toro Rosso. I think Gasly will keep that seat for 2020. If nothing else, to allow him to rebuild his confidence and find his form again. Form that we all know he's got. It just didn't work at Red Bull for him in those first 12 races. And let's be honest as well, the Red Bull programme is a little thin on the ground, I think it's fair to say at the moment. And although there are some good young drivers out there, the likes of Vips and O'Ward as examples, neither of them are ready to step up yet. So they are very limited for options. But when it comes to a teammate, I'm not going to lie, this was tough to come to a decision on. But I have gone with Daniil Kvyat. Now, yeah, he was demoted by Red Bull, dropped by Toro Rosso, and has been overlooked for that seat at the main team that was vacated by Gasly. And I personally doubt that Kvyat will ever be back at Red Bull. But Verstappen is out of contract at the end of next year, and it is very likely that Mercedes will move for him, especially if Hamilton decides to move on. So that lingering hope that he might have a shot at filling Verstappen's boots in 2021, however unlikely I think that is, will probably be enough to make him say, do you know what, one more year and stick around with Toro Rosso. However, if Verstappen does leave at the end of 2020 and Kvyat is once again overlooked, there's no doubt in my mind that he'll leave at that point. Do you know what? Haas are another tough one to call. I think Grosjean is done and will be out of F1 at the end of the season. Sorry, Dan, but I'm almost certain of that one. The question is, will Haas change both drivers? I'm not so sure they will. The car is not great, let's be honest, certainly on a Sunday. And Gunther Steiner has already been talking about how they need some experience to help with sorting that car out for next year, and has pretty much ruled out a rookie like Fittipaldi, for example. So I think they will stick with Magnussen for one more year. He has been the better of the two, and as I've said before, if the car is working on a Sunday, he will absolutely deliver as he proved last year. And thinking about it a little bit more, he will also be able to make a direct comparison between this year's car and next year's car, and that could all be vital in helping to solve their issues. As for that second seat, I did think about Kvyat, and I do honestly believe that Haas would be a good option for him and he would be a good option for Haas. However, again, that outside shot of a Red Bull seat, as I've already said, just seems like enough to keep him where he is. I'm also, by the way, not sure on Bottas either. I don't know why, but I just can't seem to see it. Instead, I've gone for Nico Hulkenberg. Stop laughing. Now that might just be my weird, sick mind wanting to see K-Mag and Nico go toe-to-toe in equal machinery, but there is some method to my madness, if you like. Hulkenberg seems far less happy at Renault than he was a couple of months ago when he was talking about how likely he was to stay. He is frustrated with the team, certainly with how the car's developing, and I think that's starting to make him consider his future. And maybe the team feel the same, I don't know. And with Steiner effectively saying that they want some experience at Haas, Hulkenberg would be a very good fit. From his personal perspective, it would mean giving up a drive with a manufacturer team, but it does feel to me as though Renault are very much behind Ricciardo, and perhaps Nico has had his chance with them now. Maybe it's time for him to move on and Renault to let him move on. Like I say, it could just be me wanting to see the two of them in the same team, but it's not totally beyond the realm of possibility. So just to confirm, I'm going with Magnussen and Hulkenberg at Haas next season. Do not put any money on that. That just leaves us with Renault then. Ricciardo is staying, no doubt whatsoever there. But I tell you what, he will be expecting a lot more from the team next season, that's for sure. They need to deliver. His teammate though, I've gone for Bottas. If he does lose his seat with Mercedes, whichever way you look at it, he's going to have to take a step down pretty much wherever he goes. But moving to a works or manufacturer team, however you want to put it, could be a soft landing. A soft landing that Toto Wolff has said he will give whichever driver he doesn't take out of Bottas and Ocon. So although it's not his decision where drivers go, I think he will be straight to Renault once he's made his decision to start negotiating. But forget Toto Wolff for a second. I still think Bottas would be a seriously good option for Renault. He is quick, pretty consistent, he's a race winner, has a fair bit of experience and will not rock the boat. So he will keep things pretty harmonious within the team. That's like one of my sayings of the year, but I think you all get what I'm getting at. He'd also be a great option to help develop that car. Especially when you think about some of the things he's probably learnt during his time at Mercedes, tinfoil hat time. From Bottas's perspective, Renault have the money. They are, as I've said twice already, a manufacturer team. And so they've got that potential to move forwards, maybe with an eye already on 2021. For me, out of all the possible options for Bottas should he be dropped, Renault are the best one, unless a shock seat opens up at Ferrari or Albon fails miserably and Marco doesn't want to have Gasly or Kvyat back at the main Red Bull team. I do want to end all this though by saying it really does feel like everyone is waiting for Mercedes now, and when they make their call, the driver market is just going to kick into action. That is it then for this video, but in the comments section down below, let me know your driver lineup predictions for next season, but please do remember that this is all a little bit of fun and shouldn't be taken too seriously. In fact, as a reminder as to how seriously you should take all of this, go back and look at my predictions from last year for this season. Raikkonen and Van Dorn. Now, when this video goes out, I will still be away and so won't be able to read many, if any, of your comments straight away, but I will catch up when I get back next week. In the meantime though, don't forget that you can follow me over on social media, and all of the links you need for that are in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean, this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.